Hey VC. So, you all know Andrew Tales from the Crate did his top 100 albums. I think David Guerra has also started running down. I think he's down in like the 60s or 70s now. But anyway, top 100 albums seemed like a fun sort of experiment or thing to not study, but like just kind of think about for a while. Really try to put them into some like an actual order because obviously which albums you like to that extent to put into what you would consider like your favorites, but to actually like put them in order is a little bit challenging. Actually, it took me a little while, and it's I'm pretty happy with the way it sits right now. Haven't made any changes in a couple days at least. Been kind of thinking about it pretty hard. Um, so throughout the next couple weeks, I'll be showing. I'll just do 10 at a time. There's 99 records and notably one CD, but I'll get to that when I get to it, not in this video. So yeah, just start with number 100. Is the B-52's debut, or as Dean would say, debut. Um, Self-titled. It's got 8 tracks here. The biggest one being Rock Lobster, which is actually probably my least favorite on here. Maybe not necessarily the worst, but probably just because how overplayed it is. But really, this is just solid. It does vein a little more on the punk side of things than some of their later stuff. Definitely, you could call this new wave as well. Whenever I, for some reason, decided to give them a chance, I think I found their second album, Views, and then I found this one shortly after. But I really enjoy these first two albums by them, and especially the track Dances Mess Around, the third track on the first side, is just a really great song. I'll go ahead and pull this one out. Inner sleeve here with the guitar. They've got the cool sort of like 50s aesthetic. I don't think this is a very first press, but it's on this Warner Brothers label. And songs about like dancing, lots of dancing, sort of surf vibes. Just a great mix of that, sort of rockabilly sound while still being like kind of original and new wave and punk sounding. Great album. Number 99 here is a classic, the Rolling Stones, Let It Bleed. I think this is an original US pressing. It's definitely early, but this is not my favorite Stones album. It's just the first one that I'm showing here. And it is, I think all of these albums I'm showing are 10s, 10 out of 10. Obviously, there's way more than 100 perfect 10 albums out there, but these are just the 100 that I consider my favorites that I own. But yeah, this is on this Blue London label, pretty classic track list, which has this sheet here. I think just has the vocal credits, or not vocal, just the musical credits in general. Track list. Gimme Shelter is one of their more popular songs. Great album opener. It's definitely kind of a lot more serious than a lot of the other tracks on here are. Not that that's a bad thing, but this does have kind of a, not a loose feel, but kind of like a fun feel, while still having some super cool, like, obviously the blues vibe is really strong here. There's a little bit of a country vibe. This is kind of them doing like an American record in a lot of ways. I think this came out in '69, which if you think about the other two, like if you think about comparing them to the Beatles, the other Beatles projects that came out in '69, well, was Abbey Road, and then the majority of Let It Be was recorded in '69. And I think this definitely far surpasses Let It Be. And on that similar note, I think pretty much all their 70s output far outpaces most of the Beatles' early solo output. Um, if we were looking at it from a purely Beatles versus Stones perspective, which I know is maybe a little done to death or talked about too much, but it's worth at least mentioning how it compares to that, I think. Great album, one of my favorite Stones albums. Next up, number 98 is Daft Punk, Discovery. I think I talked about this I talked about this in my contest entry for Soundtrack for Your Life, but I don't know if I talked about the music that much. I mean, this is pretty straightforward electronic music. Lots of samples from like disco and sort of 70s dance and that sort of thing. Probably my favorite track on here is Voyager, which I think is in the later part of the album, but really, I consider this like one of those albums that you just have to listen to front to back, you know, even though it's got lots of singles and pop appeal to it. Front to back, it was there's like an animated movie that goes with this. I think it's called Interstellar 5555. Kind of tells the story about this alien band that are like kidnapped off of their planet and taken to Earth to be sold into like the music industry here, and it's just a pretty interesting story. It's basically just a huge, long music video for the entire album, but that sort of solidified it in my mind, at least, as making this album like a whole piece. And when you look at it that way, the track list flows together pretty well. Otherwise, if you didn't have that context of the movie, maybe it wouldn't flow together so well, because it's not like a lyric. There's no real. I mean, there are lyrics, but a lot of them are samples. A lot of them are. There's just like some straightforward ballads on here. I'll just go track by track here. One More Time, the opener, is one of my favorite album openers. You've got Aerodynamic, Digital Love is a great song. Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, I think everybody kind of knows. Again, maybe that one's a bit overplayed, but still a good song. Crescendos, Night Vision, Superheroes, High Life, Something About Us, Voyager, Veritas Quo is a great track. Short Circuit, Face to Face, Too Long. It's a good album. I say that with every single record here. They're all good albums. Was this 97? This is Tiger Jaw, self-titled debut album. I think this is from like 2008, 2010 maybe. We'll see. I have a video on my channel about Tiger Jaw, just going through my whole collection. They're one of my favorite, I guess, modern sort of indie rock bands. I'm trying to describe their sound. They have almost like there's a slight Smiths influence. There's definitely some like emo influence on here. There's just a great mix of influences that kind of come together and just like kind of a pleasant sort of lighter sound, and really strong songwriting as well. I mean, if you have never heard a Tiger's Jaw song before, or a Tiger's Jaw record before, I would say to start with this one. This isn't my favorite by theirs, but it's, you know, their first, and it's just a great place to start. And if you're only going to listen to one song, I really love the fifth track, Between Your Band and the Other Band. The opener is good. It's called The Sun. There's I Saw Water, which kind of is loosely kind of an allegory around the death of Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones. There was I Was Never Your Boyfriend. Meals on Wheels is good. Pretty short album. It's like maybe a little over half an hour, but really great indie rock. There's the drummer and bass player are great. Maybe if even if they're a little understated on this record. Well, I can't get that back in the sleeve. There's 5 members. It's like 2 guitarists, a keyboard player, drummer, and bass player. And I think 3 of them do the vocals. But you'll as soon as you hear what they sound like, it's just kind of like a wall of sound. Not in the same way of like a Phil Spector or something like that, but just it's like a solid block of sound. I really enjoy their sound. 96 here, or I think it's 96. I'm gonna do this a whole lot probably. 96. It's the Beatles, Abbey Road, classic. Everybody knows this. Not my favorite Beatles album. Probably. I actually really like the B-side. I mean, if you looked at the songs individually on the second side, they don't really amount to anything. But it's kind of one of those things where it's just greater than the sum of its parts, which I guess can kind of describe the Beatles in general, at least a lot for me. I mean, I do really enjoy All Things Must Pass. It's probably my favorite solo album by any of them, but George Harrison. But you know, all their solo stuff never really amounted to anything as good as I think they did as a group. So again, just kind of greater than the sum of the parts, really. Same thing with like I said, the second side of this. I mean, the songs are just kind of throwaway songs that they left off of like the White Album sessions and Let It Be and things like that. And side A, again, if Come Together is a little overplayed, that's really my only gripe with any of the songs there. I actually really kind of like Maxwell Silverhammer. Oh Darling is great. Something is great. Octopus's Garden is enjoyable. It's not the most serious song ever, but it's so good. And one of my favorite Beatles tracks ever is I Want You, She's So Heavy. Maybe that kind of explains my taste for kind of heavier music sometimes. But I think this is just like a pretty standard early American pressing on the Apple label there. Classic label, obviously. And what can really be said about any Beatles record that hasn't been said before? It's just good music. I mean, they're popular for a reason. They were very important to my sort of musical discovery. I was thinking about this a lot when I was making my list about, you know, how certain songs I think get kind of burned out for people just based on like radio overplaying and overexposure and things like that. I never really, I guess, had that problem getting into a lot of this classic rock stuff because maybe it's my fault for never really listening to the radio that much, but while I was hearing all these popular songs for the first time, as an example, like Black Sabbath's Paranoid, I never heard that on the radio. I had to kind of find that for myself. I digress. 95. I've definitely talked about this before. The Feelies, The Good Earth. I think I've also mentioned before that if I could describe the Feelies sound, it would be kind of, at least on this record, I think their first one has a little stronger Talking Heads sort of vibe. But on this one, it's sort of like REM meets Lou Reed or Velvet Underground. You'll especially notice that in the vocals. The singer kind of sounds like Lou Reed a little bit. But this one's got a really pleasant sound again. It's just sort of like a solid block of sound. I really dig the acoustic guitar on this album. There's lots of acoustic mixed with clean electric sounds and electric guitar sounds. Just smooth song structure with like simple chords and everything, simple open chords. Flows really well. Favorite track on here is Slipping Into Something. I do think the first side is better than the second side, but maybe that's just because, I mean, they don't really change the sound too much from song to song, but it is just so good of a sound that you can't really go wrong with that one. 94 here, at least I think it's 94, is one I don't think I've mentioned before, or even mentioned this band before, but they're called Title Fight. This album's called Floral Green. It has this sort of slip on cover. It pulls off like that to reveal just kind of a standard gatefold. I've got the poster. Standard gatefold. Picture of the band on the back. With them. To simply describe this record, it's like sort of like a hardcore or post-hardcore album, like maybe Fugazi meets Dinosaur Jr. They really enjoy that sort of effects-heavy guitar sound. This one was pretty important to me in high school. Still kind of is. I mean, Head in the Ceiling fan. The fifth track on here is just so beautiful. I mean, it opens with sort of just soft electric guitar part, just kind of playing this nice, just sort of musical. Obviously, it's musical. I'm trying to describe this well without underselling it, I guess. Put on Head in the Ceiling fan, you'll know instantly what I'm kind of talking about. And that blends straight into the second side with Make You Cry. Sympathy. Lefty is a great song in between. Back to the first side. The first side I think is kind of flawless. If I had to pick a weak spot, I would say it's the track Calloused on the second side. Again, it's kind of a short record, but they make up for it with the greatness of the songs, in my opinion. Personally, again, I'll say this now. I guess this is my personal top 100. Just it's what I think. Not necessarily even what I think are the best albums, just what are my favorites. Which again, I kind of ran into trying not to underrepresent genres and things like that, and I kind of noticed myself doing that, and I was thinking like, well, am I trying to make a list of what I think it needs to be, what I think are important albums, or am I making a list of what are my personal favorite? And once I decided that I was doing my personal favorites, like I think is the pure intention of this whole process, the whole thing became a lot easier, really. So if anyone else out there is kind of making a list like this, I would suggest, like, don't try to please everybody, basically. I mean, your opinion is your opinion, and just because something is like a well-established favorite of sort of the musical world at large doesn't mean it has to be one of your favorites. And just because something is hated doesn't mean that you don't need to put it on your top 100 if you really enjoy it that much. Here, I don't know what number this is, 93, I think. Radiohead, Hail to the Thief. Not my favorite Radiohead album. Again, there will be lots of Radiohead on this list. Not lots. I think there's like 4 or 5. This is like my 4th or 5th favorite Radiohead album. I think this one's from 2003. There's no track list on the back. I do know it opens with 2 + 2 = 5, which, if I can say one thing about Radiohead, which I can say a few things actually, but if I could say one thing right now about Radiohead is they really know how to pick album openers. Every single one of the records starts strong, usually with one of the best songs on the album, and 2 + 2 = 5 is no exception to that. I'm trying to think of other great songs in here. That one goes straight into. I'm gonna have to pull up the CD here to look at the track list because I need to have some reference. Sit Down, Stand Up. It was right on the tip of my tongue. Sail to the Moon is right after that. You've got Go to Sleep. Where I End and Where You Begin, or Where I End and You Begin is a great song. Cool bass part, awesome drums, good vocals, good guitars, good everything. It's got Johnny Greenwood playing that instrument. I think it's got a French name, so I'm totally gonna butcher this. The Martinet or something like that. It's the one that's pretty similar to like a. Now I'm blanking on what the instrument is called. The Viper? No, it's the one that's featured in "Good Vibrations" by the Beach Boys. You know, the one with the sort of glissando, vibrato effect. You know, it's an electric instrument. You'll know the one. Sort of like a theremin, I guess. There's another instrument I'm blanking on. Anyway, it's got that. It closes one of my favorite album closers by them as well, which is Wolf at the Door. Yes. The big track on there is There, which is an awesome track. I don't really think I need to defend Radiohead on this list to anybody. You all get it. This one, I don't know how popular they are on the VC. They're definitely popular in the vinyl world at large, I think. This band is called Godspeed, You Black Emperor. This album is F sharp, A sharp, Infinity. And, well, first of all, this album has a ton of inserts with it, which I always forget about. But it's got like this manila folder in here full of all of them. And I took the sticker off the shrink wrap and put it on there. As opposed to just being a great album, it's got great packaging for a really good price. Godspeed You Black Emperor is a Canadian post-rock group. This album I think is from like '97. I think the CD version has some extra tracks, whereas this one is only like 2 tracks, like one on each side. It's got this crushed penny, really interesting. Just lots of little inserts that don't really even have any meaning. They're all pretty cryptic and just full of symbols and not gibberish, but kind of code. I don't know what kind of, if there's any like kind of secrets or anything in there to the album. But I don't even really know if this album has like a concept or something that it's like about. I mean, there's a spoken word segment. I don't know if it's on. I don't remember the difference between the vinyl track list and the CD track list. They're definitely different. I think the CD is longer, obviously because of the limitations of the record. But musically, they get kind of described as like something called crescendo core, which basically just means that I think they're kind of experts at, you know, just building up to great moments, really climactic moments in their music. And they sort of have like a symphonic approach to writing rock songs. It's all instrumental, except for maybe some like spoken word samples and things like that. And I'll talk about them more in a future video because one of their albums actually ranks higher on my list. Same thing with this artist, who I think I've talked about recently and just put out a new album. This is Bjork, or Bjork. I think no, the pronunciation, the correct Icelandic pronunciation of her name. But this is her second album, Post. Just classic album. Opens with Army of Me with a great Led Zeppelin drum sample, the famous When the Levee Breaks drum beat, into hyper ballad, The Modern Things. It's Oh So Quiet is probably better than it really deserves to be, or than you think it would be. It's a pretty straightforward cover of a jazz kind of standard. She's kind of like screaming at points during it, and it's just got, you know, a big band jazz sound. It's pretty interesting. Enjoy is kind of a darker dance floor track. Possibly Maybe, I think, was really important to the sort of Radiohead sound that they would go into with, you know, OK Computer and Kid A. Cover Me, Headphones, I Miss You, all really great tracks. Again, I don't think I really need to defend Bjork on the VC, at least I would hope not. I would hope everybody is sort of familiar with her music and how kind of important she is, I think, to the music world at large, especially for women. Um, she's sort of, I guess, kind of the punk of electronic music, which I don't know how brave of an opinion that is, but that's just what I think about her. Um, I think she kind of does what she wants, sort of does. I mean, she has collaborators, but I think she, is pretty brave and willing to experiment and kind of figure things out her own way. And I think that's really awesome. Anyway, that's the first 10. We'll probably have another one up next week. I may start doing multiple videos a week depending on if I acquire anything cool. As of this week, I haven't gotten any new records in, so nothing to show for that. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. This video is a little bit lengthy now. I'll go ahead and end it here. Thanks. Hope you guys look forward to the next parts of these. See ya.